Welcome back to the Gun Show VIP edition, my friends. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. I can just tell there's millions of you on the other side of the camera, right? Well, I hope so anyway. Hundreds, maybe? Thousands? I don't know. That's up to you to decide. But thank you, even if it's just one of you out there listening today. We absolutely appreciate you. Manufacturing is so very important to us here on the Gun Show, and we love to bring on capable minds, capable speakers to talk about their journeys on here as well. It's the most important thing, in my opinion, and a lot of other opinions, when it comes to stabilizing a society, when it comes to stabilizing a household. Everything around us is made by manufacturing, so we like to talk about it, and it's also quite invisible to most people. And yeah, it's just not as popular as a TikTok dance or, you know, whatever it is the kids are doing these days. As I'm starting to get older and older, and I've lost track of what the kids are doing, I'll ask my sound engineer. He's still young. Maybe he can keep me updated. In the meantime, though, I'm going to keep talking about manufacturing and be an advocate for that. But before we get into my special guest today, do want to thank our sponsors. Thank you so much, AMT, IMTS, EBITDA Growth Systems, and Shop Rescue, a really cool, hopeful Netflix series coming your way very, very soon. So thank you all for being a part of manufacturing and supporting the Gun Show VIP edition. Now, I do have a special guest. I met this young man several months ago, actually. Went into his shop on the opposite coast of Florida here and was just inspired by him, inspired by his story, his journey, his capabilities, knowing all the different high caliber machines they were running. So I want to use today's podcast for those of you listening today. We're going to go over some of the capabilities of some unique and high caliber machines out there. We're going to go over this young man's journey to try and connect with people outside the energy. Really? Am I stuttering like that already? I can't believe it. Anyway, industry, I know how to say that word, outside the industry, who might want to consider a career in manufacturing, and then those in the industry, the younger generation, as we have so many people right on the cusp of retiring that are looking to grow. They're looking, how can I grow? What do I do to grow? Do I want to be in management? Do I want to run more machines? How do I go about in manufacturing, pursuing a career that is sustainable, that is enjoyable, and something I'm going to want to be a part of for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, depending on how young you are and how old we work, right? So, without any further ado, I want to introduce a good friend of mine. He has the best beard in the world. The last time you may have seen him is with MTDCNC, where that was how I introduced him, and I was jealous, coming from Viking descent, that he had a beard like that. I don't think I can grow a beard even close. I almost even wore my kilt today to try to compete, which I cannot do. And I'm going to do something as well here, which I think is funny, but we'll see if you do. We'll see if he does. This is my good buddy, Steve. How do I say your last name?
Cochenour, Tony.
Cochenour! Yes, Steve Cochenour. Welcome back to the Gun Show, my friends. This is the VIP edition. It looks so interesting on paper here. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't say it wrong, but what a cool last name. So as a part of your last name and your adventure and your background and your journey here to Florida and all the fun stuff we're going to talk about today, let's get into it, my friend. It is such a pleasure to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Tony. It's always good to see you, man. Like you said, I think we met about 8 months ago, and you know, we really hit it off then, and I really appreciate you having me out today.
Do you remember about 8 months ago when we were setting up cameras and we started talking and the video ended up going for about twice as long as it was supposed to, as we all know that the right amount of time to watch a video is like 3 to 5 minutes, maybe like max 10. And we were like, well, we're going to have to do a podcast someday. We're just talking a lot. Do you remember that moment?
I do remember that, yep. I also remember, I don't know if you do or not, but you lost a drone that day.
Oh, thanks for the reminder. Okay, so for everyone watching, just to put that into context and listening as well, when we do what we call B-roll. So A-roll is the conversation, B-roll is the extra footage that turns all of our videos into a more cinematic, watchable version. I had a drone there that day with Steve, and there's this countdown when the battery is low that says return home. So when it returns home, it kind of went up a little bit and then goes down to its home position. And I was right in the middle of filming an epic shot, or what I thought to be an epic shot. And I saw the countdown pop up, 10, 9, 8, 7. And I was like, I got time. My fingers did not get to it in time. That drone went right into the ceiling, came smashing down onto the ground. And everyone looked at me at that shot at ATM and said, ooh, just like that. Thanks for that reminder.
No problem. Just so you know, that drone now has another life. So I took it. I have a buddy, lives around the block from me. He's a tinkerer. You know, he's the guy that takes a a mobility scooter and has it doing 35 miles an hour by the end of the day. But I brought him that drone, and it's got a second life now.
He's using it.
Yeah, he brought it back.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yep.
What a who knew? Who knew? See, this is why we bring in great guests like Steve. All right, Steve, let's talk a little bit about your journey, because I know you've been in manufacturing a long time. I get to talk to CEOs a lot. I get to talk to presidents of companies. I love talking to the shop floor people, the people who are in the day-to-day activities of the parts that are being made, why we make them, why we do what we do. And because it's been in your blood for a long time, your family's in it, your parents, your father, I want to hear that journey. I know the audience does as well.
I appreciate it, Tony. Yeah, it's been a long journey. Believe it or not, I was thinking about that as you were saying it. It's been probably 32 years I've been in manufacturing.
Impossible. You're too young.
I'll be 51 in about, I don't know, a couple of days here. But yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, Thursday. But yeah, 32 years in manufacturing. I started out in a little 7-man shop, aerospace shop, making parts for Eaton Aerospace, Sperry Vickers. And my father was in manufacturing, worked for an automation company back before automation was automation. He was building lines for the big three, building industrialized transfer lines and stuff for those guys. And my grandfather, he was Chrysler, worked at the Sterling stamping plant, one of the biggest stamping plants on the planet. He was, maintenance manager, pretty high up there. But yeah, at one point, my little brother, he got into manufacturing a year or two after me, and he decided to go the production route. He decided to go into a big CNC shop, the kind of place where I work today, a big shop, lots of big machines. I kept telling him, bro, you got to come over with me. I want you to learn how to be a machinist. You're an air nozzle operator. You're not a machinist. Somebody else is setting up your machine. Somebody else is programming your parts. Somebody else is designing and building the fixturing. Come work with me. You get to do all that yourself. And he just, kept doing what he was doing. And just a few years down the road, he was the plant manager, the youngest plant manager to ever work for that company. I think he was in his early mid-20s, maybe 24, 25. Yeah, plant manager. It was a big shop. It was probably a 70,000 square foot shop with probably 70 employees. And so he eventually talked me into going and working for him. And that's where I started my supervising. Yeah, exactly. Flipped the script on me. Yeah.
That's interesting. And you, even though we're in Florida right now and you work in Florida right now, you started in Detroit. And this is where this story starts as well, right?
That's correct, Tony. Yep. I started out in Detroit. So started out, believe it or not, aerospace, which is kind of different for the city of Detroit. I did get into automotive when I went to work with my brother. But yeah, it's a great place to learn. I mean, like you were talking about earlier, before the show, me and you were talking about younger guys coming up. That's a great place for manufacturing, the city of Detroit, and young people. It's almost born into you when you're there. I really think that the kids, I look at my kids when they were younger, and they almost knew how to play video games from, me playing video games as a kid. But in Detroit, you almost know how to read a set of micrometers, in grade school. It's part of the culture there. It's really, it's ingrained in you from an early age.
It's a valuable point, I think. And then now you got me thinking about other parts of the country and what might be ingrained in them as they're growing up. Because you're right. When I head into Michigan, you think automotive, right? Everyone does. Yep. I mean, but then I also think about, Ohio. They're similar to Michigan in the sense of how much manufacturing is done there. Okay, Indiana. I mean, that Illinois, yeah, Chicago. Like the whole Midwest area is kind of the heartbeat of manufacturing. Although it's expanded to other areas, the Northeast is really known for the medical. You got Texas and all the manufacturing going there. California is definitely a juggernaut of its own, and it's spread across the country, but going back to your point, yeah, I could imagine calipers being a toy that you see at, even though Toys R Us I think is out of business, at Toys R Us, but only in the Michigan stores, right?
Right, yeah, for sure. Believe it.
So let's learn more about this journey. You started there. Obviously,
Yep.
it's in your blood, but we're in Florida now. What brought you to Florida other than the palm trees, the coconuts, and the weather?
You know what, Tony? That's pretty much it, man. That's pretty much it. So off manufacturing, I had 2 boys that were basically grown, and I was in a new relationship, and my wife had just had a baby. And, we were looking at a new home. We were looking at, she worked for the Detroit Zoo, and I worked for a big aerospace manufacturer in Novi, Michigan. And, we were talking about settling, what are we going to do? Let's, find a house. And, I started I always wanted to move to Florida my whole life, and I wanted to wait until my boys were kind of grown, high school done, they could make the decision or they could keep their roots up there in Michigan. And I ran it by the wife. I said, I've always wanted to move to Florida. What do you think? And she's like, well, can I stay at home and raise our daughter? And I said, you know what? You can. As long as, financially we're okay to do that, you can do that. And by the grace of God, we were able to make that happen. And so we decided to pick up shop and move down here. A buddy had, at where I worked at the big aerospace company, he had came down on a cruise, and he just put out a few applications. And the company I work for now, American Tool and Mold, brought him in for an interview. He did a little walkthrough when he got back from his cruise, and he accepted a position. And I was like, well, drop on my resume, bud. So I emailed him my resume, and he printed it out, took it in for me. They gave me a call and asked me to come on down. So, yeah.
And this is, and correct me on the parts that slipped my mind, because it was about 8 months ago when we did this video, and I may have done 1 or 2 interviews since then.
Yeah, I've seen 1 or 2.
1 or 2. This is a 3rd generation family owned? 2nd generation.
American Tool and Mold?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's 2nd generation.
2nd generation.
Yep. Dimitri Lelorgis.
Great guy.
Yeah, he is a Greek gentleman that came to the U.S. via Canada. So he left Greece, ended up in Quebec, I believe, and applied for citizenship to the United States. Once he got that, he came right down here, beeline to Florida. He went to work for a very large mold manufacturer in St. Petersburg, and pretty shortly thereafter, he branched off on his own, started his own business, and that was, I guess, I think the business actually was started a few years before he took over in 1978, but I think Dimitri bought out the business in 1980, 81, something like that. But yeah, he built it into quite a juggernaut. It's one of the largest mold manufacturers in the Southeast United States. So.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that, but I want to use that juggernaut as a discussion for people who are not in manufacturing. Like we started this whole thing off with, I want to utilize you today, my friend, as for people outside of manufacturing, and then the young generation that's looking to excel within manufacturing. So I'm gonna put this into a box that you're gonna rip open for me, I'm sure. When I walked into your shop, I saw a gorgeous Cochenour machine. We stood in front of it, we talked about it. Saw another Cochenour machine that was a 3-axis machine that was one of the more, let's say, budget friendly that a lot of people can have if they want to. You took me to a precision area that has Yazda, discussionably the most precise machine on the planet. There's a lot of great discussions out there about that, but Yazda's definitely in the mix. You had a Toyota coming in that was massive, that was just being put in. The reason I'm saying all of this for the audience right now is because I want everyone to understand the foundation of Steve's words, that when he's recommending certain things for people out there coming into the industry, or for people who want to grow within the industry, there is a context. It's in his blood from his family, his brother's success. Currently, the machines he's working on are some of the best in the world. And not only is he machining the side, but there's also a molding side as well. So they make all their own molds and then do the ejection on the opposite side, which is, I guess, becoming a little bit more common as we're trying to go vertically integrate within our shops and do less outside, but it's still not as popular as I'd love to see in the future, and it's happening here at ATM, American Tool and Mold. So now that I've built this beautifully wrapped bow for you, Steve, let's talk about manufacturing and what it can bring to someone who's looking for a real career.
Beautiful. And Tony, I'm going to start at the end of that real quick.
Awesome.
First
I love when that happens.
But you mentioned at the very end of that opening about, integrating all that stuff together, the plastic injection molding and the manufacturing of the mold itself. And like you said, it's getting more and more popular, but it still is pretty rare. And that's kind of one of the things that sets ATM apart, and we also just recently, I think actually since you've been to visit us, this happened after, but we started what we're calling the ATM X project, which is rapid prototyping. So we're able to build you a single cavity tool and produce you maybe 500 or 600 or 1,000 parts. And we're able to do that in a very short lead time. Sometimes as quick as a couple of weeks, sometimes even a little quicker than that.
Wow.
So we're able, and then we're integrating that design into a production tool to get you off and running and getting you the quantities that you need to keep up with demands. But, leading into that, we were talking about manufacturing and younger people. So, and bringing people into, and that's really right now we have so many innovations and we have so many new things that are helping manufacturing, i.e., unattended time and automation and, being able to monitor and view your machines from your cell phone at home, knowing when things are running, knowing when things need attention. And, so many other things on top of that, different kind of pallet pools and all, cutting tools that are, saving time and lengthening, the run times and stuff like that. But really the resource that we are really, really struggling with right now in manufacturing is talent. Like you said, is those young people. So there is a place for those young people in manufacturing. We need you guys. We need them out there. We need them to go to those, there's all kinds of opportunities. There's all kinds of avenues that they can take to get there, whether it be going for an industrial engineering degree, a bachelor's, or, getting a degree from college, or as simple as going to a technical school. We partner with PTech, Pinellas Technical School over on our side, and we have actually several of our supervisors and project managers that are also instructors at PTech. And we really promote the apprenticeship program. We're always looking for apprentices. We like to have at least 4 apprentices on staff at all times. We do our best to continually keep that program going. And sometimes, Tony, and I'm not sure why, but it's just hard to get the momentum and to get the kids coming through. So I met a great guy at my daughter's open house not too long ago. He's an AM skills guy. So there's more than one avenue to get kids right out of high school into the trade. And we all got to do our part. I know you're doing yours. I'm doing my best to do my part and spreading the word. But there really is a place, for all you younger people out there in manufacturing. And it's not all the humdrum and the pushing a button, that I thought my dad did, right? So just coming to American Tool and Mold from Detroit, I started out on a 5-axis machine. It was the first 5-axis I ever ran, and that was incredible. I did that for about 6 or 8 months. The owner saw what I was doing. He really liked the progress I was making. He liked that, that I was using the machine a little bit differently than it had been used previously. And he asked me to go into programming. I went into programming. He had me in there for 3 years, helping out, getting code out to the machines. And, shortly after that, he asked me to take over the shop floor, which was the position I was in when I met you, Tony. I did about 10 years out there as a CNC supervisor on the shop floor. And just recently he's asked me, and you don't even know this, but recently he asked me to take on a new role. So he's asked me to be the EHS director. So I'm stepping slightly away from the hands-on manufacturing and focusing a lot on health and safety, and also some project management. We're trying to diversify and get a little bit more aerospace or defense work. And we just recently got a couple of nice certifications, an AS 9001 and an ISO 380. I'm not even sure which ISO certification it was, but we just got our recent certifications, and we're focusing on diversifying. So
all the advice in the world, all the experience in the world is worthless unless someone will stop what they're doing, take a breath, and listen to what we have.
And overall I get the picture, but some days I'm like, I'd really just like to have a day to just sit at the house and do nothing.
Tanner and Nick have so much willingness to close that gap and achieve their goals. And it energizes us and it energizes them as well.
Well, I like that you took it that route, and I'll tell you why is because we are trying to talk to the kids who aren't here yet, which you absolutely did. And then you kind of told your story about sliding over to the other side of safety, which is the other part of growing within an industry, right? So I want to break this down even further because this is one of my favorite topics. I mean, myself personally, I know my sound engineer, who I've been working with for quite a while now, we have this conversation sometimes while recording and sometimes not, about what does manufacturing mean when you're not in the industry? And I can only go back to what I thought it was when I was in high school, and I knew zilch, zero about it. So I try my very best to break it down in layman's terms, while simultaneously making it attractive enough to want to be a part of. I talked to my sound engineer. I talked to, my friends out there who aren't in it, and most of them still to this day don't get it. There's just, when you turn on the TV, you don't see the inside of shops. You don't really see how things are being made. And so what I like to do oftentimes on this show, Steve, is to pick out the parts that you like best, to pick out the parts that I like best, to go, this is why you should do it. And don't get me wrong, and I know you're going to agree with this as well. I know the audience out there agrees with it also. We need doctors. We need dentists. We need these folks also. But if you're not sure what you want to do, or if you feel like the field that you want to get into is genuinely saturated at this point because everyone is doing it, there is a 2-3 million person skills gap right now in manufacturing alone, with projections to go even further into the millions by 2030. So if you can find love, if you can find joy in creating everything around us, which a lot of us can, you know that you have a stable career for the rest of your life. So what are some of your favorite parts about manufacturing, Steve?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, Tony. Like you said, if you're the guy that likes to tinker, if you're the guy that likes to be in the garage and you like to be turning that wrench and you like to be, creating something, you're artistic, you like to, I see some of the pieces here that people, have made for you over the years. And that's, it is an art. It really is. And it's a feeling of accomplishment. So for me personally, I think I like that there is so many avenues within manufacturing. So if you start to feel a little stagnant in one particular position, if you don't like running that manual lathe anymore, then you might want to, learn how to do some flat grinding, or you might want to learn, brush up on your trig skills and do some, something a little bit more difficult. Or there's so many places within manufacturing to go. You might want to work, more with the automation. One of my favorite things coming up through the manufacturing was we actually went into a facility, and this is back in probably 2006, 2007, and we made a connecting rod line fully automated. We were doing 400 parts an hour, 20 hours a day. We were shipping 56,000 complete connecting rods to the end user every week, and we were doing it with all robots, all pick and places. And this was back in, again, 2006. So
Wow.
Automation nowadays, it's not too, but that's what I'm saying is there's always that next thing for you to do. There's always some exciting project right around the corner. And, maybe you start out in manufacturing, you start out making chips on a Bridgeport, and eventually you want to start designing. You want to go, how do you guys do that? How do you take that bottle cap that somebody gives you, and all of a sudden you can make 128 of those every 3.5 seconds? How can you do that? And then, hey, maybe you want to start working under an engineer and start learning how you do that, because that's literally what they do. They take some twinkle in somebody's eye in a boardroom, some projections, we're going to sell this many of those next year, and they turn it into an actual mold that's actually making those parts, in reality. So yeah, there's no limitations to manufacturing.
Something I like also, Steve, to kind of play on what you just said, is that we can certainly go and work for people and make magic. And oftentimes I'm playing the game when I'm on a machine where I'm trying to beat my own cycle time. What can I reduce? Well, my cutting tool lasted for 1,000 parts. What can I do to make it last 2,000? When I was a machinist, there was always games I was playing. But I tell you one thing, speaking to the audience, to the folks out there who have a creative mind, let's say they like shoes. A lot of people out there like shoes. Did you know you could design your own molds and make your own shoes? I got friends out there doing that right now. A lot of people like cars. I know some friends right now that are in motorsports that own their own company, making motorsports and racing their own cars. I know people who are doing that for motorcycles. You got Cock Stunts parts out there who doing crazy things on motorcycles right now. I got a buddy, we'll just say the name because everyone knows him in this industry anyway, John Grimsmo, who loves knives. So he started making knives and pens. So what I'm trying to say is, it is fun to make projects and work for a big company that is creating a sustainable lifestyle for a lot of folks out there. But if you're one of those folks who just wants to create something for yourself that you just desire and like, whether it be automotive, aerospace, knives and weaponry, hunting and fishing type gear, right? Shoes for fashion, a person can do that and follow their dreams in this industry.
Absolutely. I had a buddy that we had an old Morsiki. It was a MV35, an old 35 taper machine. And after the company was getting rid of it, he asked if he could take it. And he took it and he started making airsoft mods for it. And he would make little I really wanted this for my airsoft gun. I really wanted this. He took that machine and started making them. He started selling them and, doing pretty well for himself. So.
And we hear stories like this all the time. And I think these are the types of stories that can connect to people who are young right now going, I want to own my own business. I want to create something that can either help people or help me.
And not only is it fun, you mentioned that it's fun. It is fun. It is fun and it's challenging and it's progressive and it, evolves, but it's fulfilling.
Yeah,
so
rewarding, right?
You really feel when that project, you looked at the design and you went, oh my goodness, this is going to be something. This is, and then when that's done and you're sampling it and, you're looking at the finished product and you're getting the reviews from the customer that say, you exceeded our expectations. It's rewarding. You really feel, I used to feel that. I used to work with my hands when I was a kid. I'd do things. I was waterproofing basements, one of my first jobs. And you come home dirty and you come home tired and, but you feel like you did something that day. And you can still feel that in the manufacturing industry. You can really feel, fulfilled and rewarded at the end of the day. So.
And I'm sure being the size of the company, the ATM, you walk home regularly, if not daily and weekly, feeling like I've made something today. I've made a difference today. I was actually, you know what I want to do? Because I thought of this just a few minutes ago when you were talking about automation. So I want to step back to that automation and bring up this story. Yeah. Describe that automation cell that you have that, was it grinding or EDM? It's just lined up with electrodes, right?
Yeah, that was EDM.
Yeah.
So we have 3 Cochenour sinker machines. And there's a 10, an 8, and a 6, 3 different size sinkers, and they're all fed by an Aroa robot. Yes. Yeah, and it's funny, but they're fed by an Aroa robot, but they're fed with System 3R macro pallets and Aroa 12-inch magnetic work holding pallets. So that just goes to show you that you can shake hands across maybe specific suppliers and still work together. So we have basically competitors that are working together to make the end product. But yeah, it's a pretty neat cell. So it was pretty state of the art when we got it, and it's kind of our MO there at ATM. So I don't know if it was together when you were there or not, but we also just got a brand new Roku graphite cell. So it's 2 Roku graphite machines with a System 3R Work Partner 1 Plus robot in between, and I believe that one has, I want to say 480 positions for macro pallets that it's feeding those 2 graphite CNC mills. So and also while you were there, you also saw the Yazdas. Brought those up earlier. We have 2 Yazda 640 jig bores fed by a similar System 3R Work Partner 1 Plus robot that's feeding 20 Dynafix, System 3R Dynafix work holding pallets. So yeah, and that lights out in unattended time, that weekend time that you're getting. Sometimes you have a part that might be in a Yazda hard mill doing some tiny little shutoffs with some 364 cutters in there or something. You might have 8 hours of sculpting, and yeah, you can get all that time. You can load up 20 of those and let it run over the weekend or over a holiday and never lose a minute.
Yeah, and to that point, it can sometimes be frustrating when you run something overnight on a machine and the machine doesn't have the perfection that you want. And Yazda doesn't really give you those issues for the most part. And I want to step back to EDM real quick because I also want to speak to the people as we've started this whole conversation about people outside the industry. So I don't want to speak over a certain level as well, and I want everyone to be on board with what we're talking about. So in EDM, we're not talking about the clubs where boots and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants. No. It's not that type of EDM. EDM is like an electric wire system. How do I describe this? Wire that comes and cuts metal I was just saying, you want to describe this, yeah?
Yep, and so I'm not an EDM expert either, Tony, but what EDM, so there's two different types of EDM machines. Well, there's probably more than that, but I'm going to discuss two different types of EDM machines. So you have a wire EDM, which were you were just kind of talking about, and that, again, that's using a brass wire.
Usually about 10 thousandths. And
it varies in size,
Yeah.
but yep, that's what we use a lot of times. And that actually, again, like you said, it's using electrical current to basically erode the base material, whatever you're cutting, and they cut all different kinds of material. You can cut
anything.
carbide, titanium, copper, even, you can cut even things like that in it.
EDM's a lot of times used for the more difficult, harder materials that take a long time.
What EDM really helps with, Tony, is like, so if I needed a perfectly square pocket cut through a part, and I can't have a corner radius in that pocket. So if I was going to cut a pocket in a part with a 1/2-inch end mill, I would have a 250 thousandths corner radius all the way around. What the EDM will do is it'll give you, like you said, if you're using a 10 thousandths diameter wire, it will give you a 5 thousandths radius in those corners, right? So, and then you have the other type of EDM, which is the type that was fed by that Aroa robot that we were talking about. That's a sinker EDM, right? So there you're using an electrode. So you don't have the wire per se that's running through, like, let's say like a bandsaw blade. So that wire is continuously running. It's continuously sending that a little electrical charge that's eroding that material away. But you always need fresh wire because the wire is eroding also as that electricity is sparking off of the material. So the sinker EDM, you're sculpting in a CNC machine. You're sculpting a tool, a graphite or a copper electrode, and you're putting a form that you couldn't do in a CNC machine. So you have like a real tiny little pocket with some real funny little features in there that may be too deep into that pocket for you to reach with a 90 thousandths end mill. So you can put that on an electrode on a post, and you can dig that, you can get that way down in the bottom of this part that you normally couldn't reach.
And an EDM machine a lot of times is known as the set it and forget it machine because they're doing those parts that sometimes take long or the material's harder, and you have a cell set up, so you're really setting it and forgetting it, aren't you?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. So we don't do a lot of production, but we do high cavitation, and sometimes those EDM burns, they take a long time. So yeah, we're really utilizing that automation to really save some time.
Yeah, fascinating shop for everyone out there. I know that ATM loves to give tours and give people an opportunity to see what manufacturing is all about. They also are probably still hiring. They definitely were when I was last there. Steve shaking his head. Yes, we always are. So if you're looking to get south and have a little bit of warmth in the wintertime, look these guys up. Really a great area of South Florida as well. Steve, if it's okay with you, I'm going to slide over to a couple of these questions. No games yet. We do have games coming. Don't worry. That's some great games for everyone listening. But a couple of these questions, because I feel like we've covered the manufacturing side quite well today, and I want to know a little bit more about you and just have a little bit fun in that conversation. Is that all right?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. So I would like to know, let's see, can you share a memorable mistake that you've made in your career and a lesson that it taught you? Something, because, and the reason I'm going to be long-winded about this is to give you time to think about it, but mistakes are my best friends and my worst enemies. They teach me so much more than any other lesson could teach, but damn, can it sometimes be heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So one that came up a few years ago, that was a heartbreaker, was we had some parts that we were working on, and it was a repeat job that we had done probably 6 times in the past. The times that we had ran through that job previously were before me. So this was the first time I had run this job through. Well, I had pulled some old programs from the first time the job ever ran. And those programs were to a design from our hot runner manufacturer that were a little, they changed their design and shallowed up some tip dimensions. Well, I made them to the old programs, which means I scrapped out a whole bunch of parts. So I learned real quick, that we really have to pay attention to revisions and changes to the part. So it helped me to work with other people within the shop just to make sure our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed on our documentation and on our revision levels on prints and stuff like that. But yeah, that's one thing, it gets really costly, Tony. So the original time we ran the job, we were able to fix it, but it's because the parts were so far along and the delivery date was so imminent that it made more sense to weld in a plug or something and fix the part. Well, the parts that I'd messed up, they were relatively, they weren't very far in the process. They had only made it through soft milling and maybe went to heat treat. And we ended up having to scrap out the whole job and replace it. So that one hurt.
I know this is important, I fully support it, but there's moments where I'm like, I want to be important too. And overall I get the picture, but some days I'm like, I'd really just like to have a day, to just sit at the house and do nothing.
Tanner and Nick have so much willingness to close that gap and achieve their goals. And it energizes us and it energizes them as well.
You know, you meet these guys, you do an onboarding session, you start working with them, you start the coaching process, and then we call our friends. Us, along with all these people, are coming around this team to make sure they're going to be successful. All the advice in the world, all the experience in the world is worthless unless someone will stop what they're doing, take a breath, and listen to what we have.
Alex Renner. I'm an implementation project manager at Paperless Parts.
I am the business development manager for the Americas for Lazarus Swiss Lube.
ProShop ERP.
Jorgen Zink.
Aerox Technologies.
Of Edge Technologies.
Professional Employment Group.
Datanomics.
We were excited to partner with EBITDA Growth Systems. There are great partners out there in the industry that can truly help make your job easier and make you look more professional.
I really love the fact that you guys have turned this business around.
Being ambitious and having the ambitions that I have, I didn't want to be here forever and not be a part of this.
Things are awesome. Better than they could have ever been. I don't know.
Would you take 5 days off?
Just about. I really left half day Friday and got back Thursday, so almost a full week.
And we're really, really excited to see where this is going to go.
Can I tell you one quickly from mine as well?
Please. Yes, make me feel a little better.
I will.
I'm feeling a little low thinking about that.
No, we're going to lift you right back
Okay,
up. Don't
let's
you
hear it.
worry about a thing. So early on in my career, when I was first running a turning center or a lathe, depending on how the audience refers to those types of machines, we had a chuck, right? You already see where this is going. A chuck, when spinning 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 RPM, must be perfectly balanced. It's heavy. It can create problems if it's not. The parts won't hold to perfection. It creates chatter to the part, tool reduction of life. Let's just say there's a lot of things that happen. However, in this situation, it wasn't a reduction of tool life. That thing actually flew off at about 3,000 RPM and smashed against the inside of the machine, and I had to go change my pants. It was one of the scariest moments, and from that point forward, I never made that mistake again.
Oh, I bet. Kids at home, think about that stuff. There's all those things that can go wrong. You know, if you have your chuck running without something clamped down in your jaws, those jaws could unwind. The old hardened chuckers that we were talking about before, they didn't have a great brake, but they had this really cool reverse, and they were a thread-on chuck, so they screwed on, and then you could reverse them to slow them down. Yeah, so the old timers would always point at the hole in the ceiling, and that's what happens if you use that reverse. So yeah, just guys, it can be a hazardous environment. We got now that I'm in my new role, EHS director, I got to remind everybody that safety is super, super important.
Already applying that new role to the podcast. I love it, Steve. I love it.
There
All
you
right.
go.
Step away from manufacturing a tiny, tiny bit. Aside from your professional life, which we've discussed a ton, what's a fun fact about you or a hobby that you're passionate about?
Ooh. All right. So, Tony, I like to ride motorcycles.
Yeah,
so,
you do.
yeah.
I actually asked you if you rode it here today, didn't we?
And I didn't. I kind of used this weekend as a little getaway, personally. So I didn't ride today, but I do like motorcycles. That's a big part of my life. I have a couple of Harleys. I have an old 2001 Police Edition that I got 120 some odd thousand miles on that, and still get a lot of use out of it. And I have a 2008 Ultra, and that's fun. I used to breed fish.
What?
Yeah, I used to.
Didn't know that one about you.
I bred cichlids. Actually, I got to go on a really cool trip down to Costa Rica. I got to go on a collecting trip. A buddy of mine, he's a Russian guy. He was an ichthyologist. Everybody at home, an ichthyologist is a biologist that studies fish. And he worked with the beluga sturgeons in Russia. He did artificial insemination and reintroducing those into the wild. But he and I got to go on this really cool collecting trip down to Costa Rica. I spent a couple of weeks in the rivers down there, and it It was amazing. But yeah, I don't do that anymore. But it was fun.
I was just going to ask if you're going to plan the next trip over to the Amazon. I've heard some fascinating things about that river.
Yeah, that would have been. He did the Rift Lakes. The buddy of mine did the Rift Lakes over in Africa. Before me and him started going on trips. But yeah, the Amazon would have definitely been on the list.
Yeah, I want to get there sometime. It's on the bucket list for sure, as I've been to a lot of places and we're all trying to get around. All right, another question for you. It kind of goes back into manufacturing, but I think it's important for guys like ourselves who have seen a lot of manufacturing, a lot of videos on YouTube. We play on social media from time to time. We've been to different areas of machining across the country. So I want to talk about who you might admire in the manufacturing world and why, because taking a moment, as everyone knows, a lot of people watch and listen to the show. So I think it's always important when we have a moment, when we have a spotlight, when we have that pedestal to thank someone, that we use a piece of that gratitude and let them know.
Yeah. Tony, so, and this is going to sound really, really cheesy, but I'm going to go right to family. My little brother, my brother David, he's been a huge inspiration to me. He works at a company up in Detroit. He's been high up at Ellison Technologies. He's been way up at DMG Mori. He currently is the operations manager or director of operations at a company called Next Industries up in Detroit. So they're the representative for Kitamura Machine Tools. They also represent Hyundai Wea, Sterig, a few other. I think they have a couple of Swiss machine lines, stuff like that. But he's an inspiration. I mean, this guy, he works his butt off. He works his tail off, Tony. He's there. I don't even know. I mean, 12-hour days are short for this guy, and he's there. He's there weekends, and he's there holidays, and he very rarely takes breaks, and he's go go go. And that's something our father instilled in us as little ones, and I mean, he took it to another level. And another person I just want to mention real quick, my son. He got into I moved to Florida, and he got into the machine trades. He ended up going to work with my brother, and he worked for Morisiki at the time, and they couldn't have him work directly under my brother. Maury's got a pretty strict nepotism policy. So what they did was they had him work the whole United States service, and so he worked out of Chicago, but he got to do a lot of traveling. He went to Japan, he went to Germany after the DMG merger, got to train with in the plants with the people putting the things together. So he really learned from a young age how stuff's supposed to be done. So both of those guys are inspirations to me. So
love it, man. Thanks for sharing. Are you ready to play some games?
Sure, let's do it.
Awesome. So we're getting ready to play some games, guys, for everyone out there who's enjoyed these stories by Steve and need to have a reliable partner for your molds. ATM, you can Google them. American Tool and Mold, great company, second generation, family owned. All the stuff we described, by all means, give those guys a look. It's worth it. Trust me, I've been there before. So we have two games. The game Would You Rather and Rapid Fire Questions. So Would You Rather is kind of a fun game where we pitch two opposites against each other and try to figure out where Steve sits in the middle. So an example of that would be, would you rather work with outdated equipment or have the latest technology but with frequent malfunctions? For those of you who listen to this show regularly, you've probably heard that example before, but I keep repeating it because I don't want to use it for the people that already have prepared themselves. This is authentic and transparent, and we don't want to give a heads up for this part. They're games, right? That's what makes it so darn fun. So I have a bunch of questions here, and that's the first game, Would You Rather. The second question, Rapid Fire Questions, is just a bunch of random fun things, and we're going to pick the first thing that comes to Steve's brain right away, right? So, all right, let's go with the first one here where we're doing Would You Rather. Would you rather work in a sector facing declining demand but high margins, or increasing demand with low margins?
Tony, I gotta say increasing demand with low margins. I'm seeing it even at work, so I don't know a lot about that aspect of the business, but I see it over on the plastic side. We might get some part in there, and they're like, the margins are incredible on this. And it's like, yeah, you make $3.40, but they're buying 16 a month. Give me the one where you're selling them, 40,000 of them, at 3 cents a piece. Yeah, sure. The profit margins are huge on the other one, but yeah, I got to go with increasing demand and lower margins. We have things like automation, and even on the plastic side, we use a lot of automation over there as well, end of arm tooling and, some of the E-multis and stuff like that, which take the human factor out. And yeah, for me, it's got to be, increasing demand and lower margins.
That's kind of where the Swiss machining world thrives as well. Just millions of parts off of the machine, just 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All right. Would you rather work in a role with significant overtime but high job security, or regular hours with less job stability?
Dude, I'm from Detroit. I mean, do you even have to ask me? So, to elaborate on that is, the culture in Detroit is overtime, OT, OT, OT. So, I'm all about, put it in what it takes to get the job done. So for sure overtime.
All right, here's one for you, especially since we live in Florida. Would you rather work in a factory with perfect temperature control but poor lighting, or excellent lighting but uncomfortable temperatures?
That is tough there. So thankfully I work at American Tool and Mold, and we are blessed. We have both. We have incredible temperature control, and we also have, we had incredible lighting, and we just modified and put in all new LEDs on motion sensors. So we have both. But I think I'm going to have to go with temperature control and poor lighting. So I can do something manually. I would get myself a headlamp if I had to, Tony. I'd be like spelunking down there in my machine, making sure my parts are good. But yeah, I think the temperature control. You got so many problems. I mean, in the kind of industries I've always been in, aerospace, medical, molds, it's tight tolerance, a couple of tenths, and temperature really makes a big difference. One of the first things I learned when I started grinding was thermal expansion coefficients and stuff like that, because sometimes I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you're working on a 6.5 inch diameter part, you're talking thousands when you're trying to hold 50 millionths. It's significant. So yeah, I'm gonna go with temperature control.
That's a good answer, my friend. And I'm actually going to expand on that a little bit because you made a super valuable point. I've been to, I don't know, over 60 countries at this point, and talked about manufacturing. And I've walked into shops before, and I go, "What do you make?" "Oh, we're high precision." And it's like 1,000,000 degrees in there. And I'm like, how can you be? You know how humid and hot, like your thermal expansion just on temperature alone going from 80 degrees to 100 degrees, you can't hold it. You know what I mean? So the reason why we have those temperature controlled rooms for the high precision accuracy is exactly what you said. So really a great answer.
I mean, even if you could, and you could do the calculations, you could do the
mathematical,
you could do the math, and be able to get your tolerances. But the problem is now your machines aren't going to hold the tolerances. So anybody that's tried to hold tenths, they're going to see that their machine is constantly moving. Even if you're talking a Makino. And we mentioned Yazda earlier, not a problem with the Yazdas. Those things, I swear to God, if there was 30 degrees difference of temperature, your AC went out over the weekend, and you come in Monday, and it's 30 degrees warmer than it was on Friday, that machine's holding the same exact tolerance. Correct
me if I'm wrong, but that's constantly checking itself, right? That's what the Yazda does.
A lot of machines have those features, like Makinos. We have 4 Makinos, the Kitamuras. A lot of them have the thermistors. Even the Akumas have the thermistors built throughout the castings and the spindle heads, but there's only so much you can do with them. Yazda's got it figured out. They're cooled. Their castings are cooled. Their ball screws are cooled. Everything's cooled. So they're controlling the temperature of the machine itself, and they're monitoring and adjusting for deviations.
I had the great pleasure of going through that factory in Japan.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
I'll see if I can get you over there. We'll talk to my friend Cochenour-san and see if we can make that happen. Also, that part right in front of you is made on a Yazda, and that was a gift from Cochenour-san. Truly a beautiful. It's called what is it? I'm going to say Nike, like the shoe, but
Nike. It is.
Just making sure it's pronounced the same way.
Yep.
It's Nike for sure.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. Nike.
So, all right, you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
These are really fun because it's just off the top of your head. All right, first one. Let's see what we got here. One innovation you wish you had invented.
Ooh, I'm going to say verification software for programming. Verification. Because that's important. You can do anything with that stuff. Machining environment, making sure that you're not going to have a crash or a part out of spec before you even make a chip.
Does Google count? Can I say Google?
Oh, okay. All right, you got me.
I'll take Google. All right, let's see here. If you could automate one thing in your life, what would it be?
My house. I looked at
That'd be cool.
Me and my brother had a talk years ago about automating a house. So you could do everything from like your refrigerator. At the time, 2007, we were doing this automated line. It would look at each part and it would evaluate it by pixel size. So if there was a deviation, it would measure your acceptable tolerance is 3 pixels. You could do that with your refrigerator. Once the milk got to a certain level, it would automatically reorder from the Kroger delivery, and everything would, you know what I'm saying? Automate everything. Your lights when you come in and out of the room, your driveway with heat coils through it so you don't have to shovel it. I'm up in Detroit at the time.
I'm picturing that, yeah.
Up in Detroit, so all that kind of stuff.
I like it, yeah. That sounds very Back to the Future-ish is what they tried to do, I think, there. All right. A historical figure you'd hire for your team.
Henry Ford.
Ooh, that was easy for you. Yeah. And from Detroit. Well done. The one tool you can't live without.
The internet.
I'm with you there, too.
Yeah, no, the internet. The answer to all the world's questions at your fingertips.
The interweb. It's all true out there, too. All of it.
Every
you can't lie on the internet, so just go to it, trust everything. Yeah, right.
Every word.
Last question for you, my friend. A book every manufacturer should read.
Who moved my cheese?
Is that a question you're asking me?
No.
I didn't bring you any cheese today.
No. So, change is always change is inevitable and it's important and it's mandatory to keep moving forward, right? Change has to happen and it's so difficult for so many people, right? It is. There's a book called Who Moved My Cheese that just talks about that change, and it just lets you know that we don't need to take things personal. It's for the better of everything, for the environment, for the product, for the customer. It's I think change, learning how to better accept change.
I'm going to go check that book out now. Appreciate that, Steve. Steve, you have been an honor. It's a real pleasure. I'm grateful you had the time to come see me. I have a gift for you, if that's okay.
Absolutely. I didn't bring you anything, Tony.
That's all right. You don't have to open that right now, but it is a gift for you. Thank you so much for your time, Steve. Your wisdom, your knowledge, your compassion, your understanding of the industry, what you're willing to teach others and grow as well. Time is valuable, and you offered a piece of that to us, so we thank you for that.
It's my pleasure, my friend. Anytime I get to hang out with you is a good day, man. We really appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely. For everyone watching and listening, we appreciate your time as well. You're all amazing. If you have any questions about manufacturing for Steve or myself, or just in general, how to get involved, how to grow within it, if they're hiring and you're looking to turn in your own resume or just get started, whatever it is, whatever question, don't be afraid to ask. That's one lesson I've learned along the way is don't be afraid. I was that silent student that never put his hand up, never asked a question, was always curious and didn't get to find out the answer until the internet was released, because I'm old and I didn't always have the internet, but until that happened. So always ask questions. Thank you all for watching and listening. We appreciate you. To our sponsors out there, thank you for everything you do as well. To my sound engineer, Christian, you are incredible. Thank you for doing what you do. My editing team, MTDCNC, everyone across the world, keep manufacturing alive, keep it fun, and we'll see you next time.